Good evening, everybody, and we're here to celebrate Scott Connor's birthday with a board meeting this evening.
That is a great way to start this meeting.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. You can't let that go by. And Dr. Tucker's daughter.
Yes.
So let's go with 2.02, approval of agenda.
I move the board approve the agenda as presented.
We have a second. And does anyone have any comments on that? Roll call, please.
AJ,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Angie,
Yes.
Nick,
Yes.
Kim Marie,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
motion carries.
Brings us to 2.03, honoring excellence. Dallas.
Good evening, everyone. I think we did this last year, and we thought we would do it again to kick off our SOAR Award program. As you may know, we started our SOAR Award program here in LPS 5 years ago. This is year number 5. It's hard to believe. And it's a way for us to go out into the district and give them a small token of appreciation for all the great thing all of our staff do each and every day. And in those 5 years, we've received dozens and dozens and dozens of nominations from community members, staff members, parents, and we actually get to kick it off full throttle later this week as we'll head out into some buildings at the tail end of this week. But what we thought we would do tonight is bring one of our recipients, our very first recipient here of this 18-19 school year, and join us live and in person. So I'm going to introduce Miss Kristen Redmond, nurse from Shoal Creek Elementary. Kristen, I'm going to embarrass you if you could step next to me here at the podium. She had no idea what she was doing here tonight. I did not reveal anything. It was a big surprise, and the surprise has been unveiled. But what I need to do is read what this parent said about Kristen. Nurse Kristen Redmond is nurturing, kind, and caring to each and every student at Shoal Creek Elementary. I can't think of a better nurse, advocate, and friendly face students visit if they need medical care at school. Yesterday, my second grade daughter wasn't feeling well when I dropped her off at school. We stopped in to see Nurse Redmond to help decide whether she stays at school or goes home. We've all been there. She lovingly talked to my daughter about her stomach ache and what ailed her, took her temperature and vitals, and then encouraged her to try class for the day. She gave her the sweetest hug and pep talk about the importance of trying until you can. She even checked on her midday to see if she was feeling better. In short, Kristen makes every child feel loved, special, and cared for, which is especially important when they're not feeling well, have to take medicine, or need extra support, and mom and dad isn't there to help. And I can tell you all firsthand experience, this is a great individual to recognize with our SOAR Award to kick off the 2018-19 school year. We have a certificate. When we go out to buildings, Dr. Tucker usually has the certificate, hands it over to the recipient, and then in years past we've also had a gift card presentation. And this year we are so excited to have a new sponsor. That would be the Liberty Education Foundation. And Tana Campbell, the executive director, is here with us this evening. And Jody McGarrett here as well. Ladies, if you'd want to come up, the foundation is going to present each of our recipients this year with a $50 gift card. So we appreciate their support. Thank you. You bet. And I also need to acknowledge some special guests that came to support her this evening. In the room, we have Shoal Creek Principal Christy Bowman, Shoal Creek Assistant Principal Jamie Ackert, Director of Health Services Kathy Ellermeyer. Am I forgetting anyone else? I introduced you lady. And her husband, yes, her handsome husband. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. Awesome. So, again, we appreciate the Liberty Education Foundation for their support, and we look forward to recognizing many, many employees throughout this school year. I was telling somebody earlier this evening, if you ever need a pick-me-up, come by my office and you can jump in that portal where people submit the stories about our staff, and you'll be boosted for the day. So we look forward to it. So with that, that concludes Honoring Excellence for this evening.
All right. Thank you, Dallas. We're going to take a break so that members of the board can individually congratulate the honoree tonight. But before we do, what will be next on the agenda when we come back is public comment. If anyone wants to make comment during the public comment section, there are blue cards on the table right outside that door. You fill one out, you give it to myself, Dr. Tucker, or another member of the board, and we'll make sure you get an opportunity to speak as soon as we're back from the break at about 7:20.
Okay, I feel like I'm in a hole. There we go.
audience you needed.
Are you going Thursday?
I am.
So you have your training that day? Okay. Sandra and I were talking about who's going when. She-
What is there? Did you open your note?
I don't know what I did. I can't find it. I tried to put all of them together.
And
Plus,
we're
make sure you got it.
back. All right. 2.04, public comment. People addressing the board will be asked to not repeat what someone before has said. Persons wishing to address any subject concerning Liberty Public Schools and/or education may do so at the podium. Persons addressing the board are asked to keep their remarks concise and to the point. Each speaker shall be limited to 3 minutes. A person or persons may speak only once at the meeting. Concerns brought forward during public comment may be addressed by the superintendent or appropriate staff members, usually within a week. And we have one card, and I will invite Abby Zavos to the podium.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Abby Zavos, and I wanted to come here tonight and introduce myself. I am a candidate for state representative in District Number 38. I am running as a Democrat, and I wanted to share my policy on education, which is that I believe very strongly that our state legislature needs to fully fund our education formula and needs to keep that adjusted for inflation, which they have not been doing. I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here. I wanted to let you know that I am strongly opposed to voucher programs and charter schools and anything that diverts taxpayer money into any school that is for profit or that serves as a religious education. And I am more than happy to answer any questions. I do have my flyers here with me. I'd love to hand those out to you if that's acceptable to everyone. And I won't take a whole lot of your time. As I said, I just wanted to introduce myself, kind of let you know where I stand on education, and see if you had any questions.
Thank you.
May I?
If you want to leave those, then we can take care of that after the meeting. Does that work? Thank you. So next that brings us to the consent agenda. And our adopted rules of parliamentary procedure, Robert's Rules, provide for a consent agenda listing several items for approval of the board by a single motion. Most of the items listed under the consent agenda have gone through board subcommittee review and recommendation. Documentation concerning these items has been provided to all board members and the public in advance to assure an extensive and thorough review. Items may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of any board member. So do we have a motion with respect to the consent agenda?
I move the board approve consent agenda items 3.01 through 6.03.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion on this? Roll call, please.
AJ,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Angie,
Yes.
Nick,
Yes.
Kimberly,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
motion carries.
And that brings us to 7.01 policy revisions.
You have another set of MSBA updates, of which there are about 13 policies varying in terms of the topics that they cover, but we will share those with you this evening for first read and take the next month as board members and administration to be able to cull through them, ask questions, recommended changes, whatever that might look like, bring those back to you in October for your consideration and approval. Seemingly, we are kind of in that season following last spring's legislative session and some cleanup that's taking place based on some statutory changes that occurred in Jefferson City. So we'll continue to bring MSBA updates to you as they're presented to the district.
Anyone on the board have any questions after first read? All right. That brings us to 8.01 Casey Tech Academy.
Just a quick update on Casey Tech Academy. We started those conversations back in May. And then through the course of the summer, we're working on the creation of Casey Tech Academy in partnership with Kearney School District, Magna LMV, which is located in our industrial park, as well as Metropolitan Community College. One piece that we are still waiting on is the finalizing of a memorandum of understanding. We've been checking in on that periodically, and that is still in the works with legal consultation. We do want to share some great news that we learned yesterday, hot off the presses, and that the collaborative or the learning network that was collaborating one with another to be able to create Casey Tech Academy also applied for a $100,000 grant with the Kauffman Foundation. And we learned yesterday that we received that grant. So signed on the dotted line and sent it off today. So now we're in that process of establishing the financial management piece, but then also the work that begins with the outcomes and outputs, the metrics piece that we put into the grant, which will involve scaling in cooperation with other school districts. But then in addition to that, being able to work on the associate's degree piece while completing the high school graduation requirements, the workforce credential, and so forth. So there's a lot of strategic planning involved as it relates to next steps in subsequent years. I do owe a tremendous amount of thanks to Bill Nicely, superintendent in Kearney School District, Dr. Jennifer Kopp, who works in Kearney School District as well, Dr. Moore, Dr. Westfall, Colleen Jones, as well as Beth Heidi, in terms of the work that we did this grant application together. And then in terms of things to come, Cindy Sullivan and the finance team in terms of managing the grant award. So it's $100,000 spread over the course of the next 2 years. So we'll continue to provide updates and hopefully schedule a time for the board to be able to go and see what's going on at our industrial park with Kansas City Tech Academy.
All right. So we are ready for new business, legal services agreements.
Under 9.01, you may recall back in July of 2016, we put an RFP together for legal services. And there are some provisions that allow us to be able to have engagements with legal services, specialties, but then also general counsel. And so we have 3 proposals that are submitted to you this evening that are really renewals and contracts. So I wanted to turn it over to Mr. Anderson to provide a brief update on these 3 items.
Very briefly, this is just an annual renewal, so unlike some other agreements we have, where we might enter into agreement for a couple of years, we do this on an annualized basis. Probably put the RFP out again in a couple of years. So this is kind of midstream of that. And then the only thing I'd point out is, as is permitted under that original arrangement agreement, that they can increase the rates, and 2 of the firms have slightly increased the rates. All 3 are rated out in that, at the max kind of partner level, about $2.25 an hour, which is pretty commensurate with what other districts would see for that type of services. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions, and just appreciate the suggestions.
Any questions for Mr. Anderson?
This is for action. Okay. Do we have a motion?
I move the board approve legal services agreements with the firms of Gwynn Mundorf LLC, Tuath, Keeney, Cooper, Mohan, and Jackstad, PC, and Withersbrand, Igo, and Molyneux.
Second?
Rover second. AJ.
All right. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
AJ,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Angie,
Yes.
Nick,
Yes.
Kimberly,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
motion carries.
9.02 contracts and purchases.
We have 2 items that are presented to you this evening, one of which falls under our board policy DJ F-1, allowing emergency purchases. And we had a situation at Ridgeview Elementary necessitating a quick fix related to a chiller and an HVAC system. In terms of the price, $3,495, and Train working on that for us in terms of getting that up to speed. So that's one item. The second item is actually no cost in that it's a free professional development opportunity. Given the work that Epic Elementary has been doing as an Apple Distinguished School with Apple, they've agreed to provide some professional development experiences at no cost, but there is a contract associated with that. So we wanted to bring that to the Board of Education for consideration in respect to that professional development opportunity. So those two items to present for your consideration.
And this is also for action. Anyone have any questions or ready to make a motion?
Move the board approve the Apple Professional Learning Specialist Support Agreement and emergency purchase for the HVAC repairs at Ridgeview.
Second.
Discussion? None, roll call, please.
AJ,
Yes.
Scott, David,
Yes.
Angie,
Yes.
Nick,
Yes.
Kimmery,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
motion carries.
9.03, local compliance plan.
Local compliance plan is another one of those annual items that we bring to you, typically with some minor revisions with the help of the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. This year is a little different in that we've not had a full State Board of Education until recently. And so the State Board and the department have not dove into the compliance plan and made any recommended changes. Nonetheless, we wanted to stay on schedule and bring that to you just for awareness. The only change that we've made is made it applicable to the 2018-19 school year. And so we anticipate this remaining on that annual schedule and bringing changes to you as they are made by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. So simply sharing that information for your awareness and, if anything, a little bit of a paper trail in respect to our board docs process. So.
Questions or comments on this? Seeing none, we'll move to 9.04, insurance utilization and recommendation.
I wanted to spend some time this evening kind of giving you an overview of where we've been since the start of the school year. Greatly appreciate the work of Team Liberty as it relates to matters pertaining to kind of the wellness of our staff, workplace issues, and diving in respect to calendar decisions and health insurance benefits and the like. You have a couple of documents that are presented to you this evening in board docs, one of which is the recommendation from myself as superintendent to the Board of Education. That's shared to you this evening for first read. I would encourage you to look at that and then shoot any questions that you might have to us. We'll bring that back to you in October for consideration with any tweaks that we might deem necessary between now and then. I won't comb through those items that are within that recommendation. We've brought some experts to be able to talk through that with you and kind of share the journey over the course of the last several weeks in getting Team Liberty's involvement as well as where we sit in respect to health insurance and utilization. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Vogelhar to introduce our guests, and then they'll come up and share their report.
Holmes Murphy is our brokerage firm for benefits. They work very closely with Team Liberty. So representing Holmes Murphy tonight is Matt Wheeler. He's come to talk through our utilization statistics, the impact that is having on renewals, and kind of how we got to the recommendations that Dr. Tucker presented to you for first read. So Matt?
Bob, Dr. Tucker, thank you. Okay, so what we're going to hit tonight briefly is give a little bit of, maybe a step back as I break. That is bad. Dee hooked me up with the technology, and I just smashed it on the ground. So, you know, one of the key things that really, even if you step back a year ago at this time, that Team Liberty really discerned and had a lot of really in-depth conversations about was what are the right moves for all the members in the district to try to get in front of this juggernaut that is healthcare inflation and trend. So made a very conscientious decision going into 2018 to choose a narrow network. And so part of what we'll look at in some of these brief utilization stats, you have a little bit of a deeper dive in your board docs. Just have a summary version here. But we kind of wanted to talk about the impact that network has had. And there's some very positive signs. And in relation to how the contract is structured, there's some room and some improvements still to be made. So really what this slide here basically summarizes, the red line on this particular exhibit demonstrates the contract allowance that you have built into the premium you pay to Blue Cross of Kansas City for claims. So ultimately, where you would want this contract to be operating is for the claims to be underneath that line. And part of the reason for making the decision around network in 2018 was because of some of these cost pressures. The very good news is if you look over a historical trend, particularly over the last 12, 24 months, is that The network has had success, particularly in inpatient and outpatient use that we'll look at here in a second, of really kind of stemming that inflation, primarily because the cost at point of use has been less. That's a very positive thing. The other positive thing is that the district had a 7% cap agreed to going into 2019 from Blue Cross of Kansas City, which is also a positive. The reality is that the cost pressures from the claims would have exceeded what that cap was. But we'll talk about, we also received an ACA windfall that really lowered that cap from 7% to around 3%, and then the district Team Liberty made a small plan design change that we'll talk about. But I think the long story short of this slide is that there's some positive news. We've seen that with this narrow network, that it's kind of helped stem the medical inflation to a certain extent. We'll see how that operates in the fullness of time, because it still comes down to how much we use the plan. But it has been offset, and that's what we'll talk about here coming up. On this particular slide, it breaks down the components of where all the costs are. On the yellow-green type of bar, you see Blue Cross's benchmarks. And overall, and that's been historically true with Liberty Public Schools, that versus benchmarks in Blue Cross's book of business, you've been in a very positive place. I think the really good news when we look at this exhibit is that if you look at the red chart, that's exactly where you were 13 to 24 months ago in terms of cost. And the purple line is where you are in the last 12 months. A heavy chunk of that on this new network. And it's definitely been an influencer, particularly on your inpatient and outpatient expenses, which is what it's designed to do. Physician costs have kind of treaded water, which is what we would have anticipated. And Liberty Public Schools is facing the same issue that almost universally our customers are seeing, which is the tough news about this is that the increase in pharmaceutical costs have almost completely offset the gains we've made on the inpatient and outpatient use side. We'll take a little snapshot at that here in a second, but that's really kind of the sobering reality that both Liberty Public Schools and the community at large and the nation at large is facing with some of these specialty pharmaceutical risks.
I think you should translate PM for me.
Thank you very much. It is per member per month.
Perfect.
So we just try to break it down to an average per head cost. The district grows. You have spouses and dependents covered on the plan, so it takes all of your associated expenses and then divides it by every belly button that's covered underneath your health insurance plan here at the district. We take just a real quick snapshot on the prescription claims side here to look at claims over 1,000, which really is a good correlation for specialty pharmaceuticals. And if you're not familiar with what that is, primarily these are very boutique created drugs, not the mass marketed blood pressure oral medications that we're used to seeing, but very targeted scripts, many times injectable, administered in an outpatient setting or even in an in-home setting with a nurse for cancer care, for cystic fibrosis, for multiple sclerosis. And they're very effective for treating these conditions. They're also very expensive. And so really this ongoing story we'll continue to see in this space is exactly this story. These type of scripts didn't exist, say 7 to 10 years ago. And now they represent 60% almost of your overall prescription cost. And all of the pipeline for the drugs is focused in this space. So you can see it's not just the burden of cost. So every single one of these injectables, for instance, costs $3,000. But there was, when we look at claimants, a 30% increase in the number of individuals utilizing these. So technology is very good. We're finding good uses for addressing some really dread healthcare conditions, but there's some serious costs involved here, and that's been one of the drivers on your plan for sure. Translating that history into this particular exhibit, and so apologize to the audience because it's probably a little bit tough to see. Let me pull up a slide for myself as well. This just kind of summarizes where all of the different line items for this particular health insurance renewal are positioned. And really, on the medical front, we've touched on components of it. The good news was that the ACA did away with taxes in 2019 for the excise portion of the tax. And as a result, it really lowered the renewal from the initial 7% position that was anticipated to the, really was right just over 3, it was 3.4% was effectively the position where the renewal stood. Team Liberty decided to make an additional benefit change to further influence the cost of the medical renewal down to 2.9%. That particular change was also in the pharmacy space. It was in mail order prescriptions. Last year, the team decided to implement an active or passive kind of opt-out program to influence mail order use because it's more cost effective. And they've decided to go ahead and take the next step because it was effective, but it didn't really capture all of the available drugs that were there. So the next plan year, there'll be a $10 penalty at place at the retail pharmacy if someone chooses to use retail as opposed to engaging a mail order institution. That's the sum total of the medical. There was lots of other things considered in the mix, everything from networks to other plan design features that were considered, but ultimately that's where their recommendations came down. Both dental and vision, which are the next two line items summarized here, were really in the same boat. Both of these products were coming off of 3-year rate guarantees that were booked for the 2016 calendar year. And they were both very aggressively written at the time. And so what has happened now with renewal is they both had severe cost pressures in play for the renewal. They were able to secure on the dental front an 8% cap for 2019 and a successive cap in 2020 to try to give a little bit of breathing room. Did a soft market check to see if there was any competitors that were interested in bettering that price, and the answer was to the negative. Both of these products, the dental and the vision, in the last 3 years, the claims have actually exceeded the premium collected. So it's been excellent pricing for member use. Cigna is interested in trying to influence positive dental outcomes, so they're adding a $250 additional benefit for plan maximums for those members that will receive preventive benefits. So that is going to take place for 2019 for those that actually receive preventive services in 2018.
And currently, we're about 71-ish% already taking those preventative measures.
Yes,
so that's
absolutely.
a value add for people to do nothing different.
Absolutely. So 7 out of 10 members will get an additional $250 benefit, which really increases the maximum benefit by 25% over what they have today. But Cigna strongly feels that it's that 20% that they're not capturing that is resulting in some of this excess use of the plan. So they're hoping to positively incent people to go that direction. The vision program with MetLife, again, was in that same boat. It just came off of a 3-year rate guarantee. The claims have exceeded the premium in hand there by over $70,000 for that duration. So there was a lot of cost pressure. Again, did a soft market check to see where that was. This renewal initially came out in excess of 30%. It got down into the mid-20s. And 3 years ago, when this product was put in place, there's a unique feature here at the district where there's a core vision plan and a buy-up vision plan. And those on the buy-up vision plan can get both glasses and contacts, which is a unique feature. And the plan is very heavily used. Team Liberty's made an effort over the last multiple years to make sure that as peers are purchasing insurance coverage, that there's cost neutrality. So if someone is buying up to a particular benefit plan, they're getting the true value of it. If they're adding a spouse, they're getting the true value. If they're buying up to a benefit, like this is the case with the vision, then they're paying the full premium difference. So the decision was made to simply pass the increase along to the buy-up component, which is where all of the use is. And so the rate translation for that on an employee-only basis is a little bit under $12 a month for employee-only, but all of the increase was associated over to the buy-up plan in this particular instance. There's also life disability coverages that are still under rate guarantee with the standard, and there's going to be a change in the flexible spending account vendor primarily for service concerns for the existing entity. So that's kind of a brief overview of some of the line item components. There's a brief just kind of financial exhibit for the dollars that directly impact the district, particularly on the medical, dental, and vision plan. Maybe I've broken the advancer. He said he was going to freeze it if I didn't go long enough. So, so here you just see the overall net expense to the district is 3.1% when we look at the 3 prime drivers for the expenses in the medical, dental, and vision categories. That's a brief utilization snapshot and overview of some of the decisions that were arrived at by a Team Liberty. Any questions that I could address the board from that?
Matt, you talked about the cost of those specialty meds. Those are treating life and death kinds of
Yes.
conditions, so they're really important.
Yes.
Any things that can be done to help target some of those costs, deliver the same therapeutic impact in a more effective way?
Yeah, there's two components. One is Blue Cross last year basically is controlling site of care use. So there's controls over how and where you purchase it from and where it's administered. There was early on in those administration, obviously, abusive scenarios where it could be administered in a hospital setting and then the price grossed up. So the cost at point of use is controlled within the plan design structures and requirements. The second question is a giant one, right? And the reality is, if you pick on something, say, like a cystic fibrosis drug, that's specifically created for a particular genetic subset and to control their condition and hospitalizations, there's just simply not anything else like it out there. The cancer meds that are created to go hand in hand with specific treatments that they've created. You can think of other conditions that we have in our employer groups, spinal stenosis type of issues from congenital anomalies that's treated that is going to aid someone in being able to walk that never would have been able to otherwise. You just can't get that off the shelf at CVS. So it is the $1,000 million billion question that lives out there. Medicare is struggling with it. Everybody's struggling with it. There is no direct, efficacy answer for that. I think it's going to give somewhere in the mix, whether we think it's the reinsurance community ultimately in the self-funded marketplace that may ultimately blink, because while employers have to offer unlimited plans, they don't have to absorb unlimited losses. And that may kind of move the conversation along, but there's no answer for it at the present time. Other than controlling costs at point of use, putting strict protocols around it, strict medical management. But they're being very much created and marketed in a sense to make sure and cater to those that have those distinct needs. And to your point, it's something that we've never seen before, that it happened last year to us twice, where the day that the Food and Drug Administration approved a particular script, we received phone calls from our employer groups where members were calling wondering when it would be on the formulary. And if my dependent's in that condition, I completely understand why. So it's a complex question.
Thanks.
Don't have the silver bullet answer, David.
Oh, it's tough.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
So again, as a reminder, please take them next month. If you have questions, please refer to me or Dr. Vogelar, and we'll be glad to get you an answer. Again, so appreciate the work of Team Liberty and diving in and getting to these recommendations as we bring them to the Board of Education.
I just have a comment about that, just
Yeah.
for Bob and Team Liberty. This is such a huge part of our budget, and it's so impactful. It's just so comforting to come in and hear that Team Liberty has spent so much time wrestling through these decisions that are going to impact all of them personally. It just makes it easier to sort through.
Yeah, and I would say, and Cindy too, who witnesses wrestling is the right word. I mean, there is a lot of angst, a lot of emotion. They want to do the right thing for Liberty Public Schools and for our employees. So, thank you.
Okay. Anything else on that? We'll move to reports from administration.
First off, this evening, we have the Academic Services Report that is provided for your review. We have a couple of engagements taking place throughout the state and country, so a couple of us are traveling, but would defer to Dr. Westfall and Dr. Moore if there's anything that they want to add to the Academic Services Report this evening. Any additions?
We have a busy couple of days coming up at the end of this week, with an early release on Thursday, where administrators get to choose what they do with their buildings that must relate to their school improvement plans. And then on Friday, we are hosting Pineapple PD once again, and that will be at Liberty North. All K-12, pre-K-12 will be at Liberty North on that day in the morning. We have a lot of different sessions planned. We're pretty excited. We have at least 30 each of the 30 sessions each, 45 minutes for people to choose from. Just want to plug the high school study team and Liberty Virtual Teachers are both hosting sessions to kind of talk through what they're doing, so I'm excited about that. In the buildings, we'll have a few hours in the afternoon to talk through visible learning and to see how they're progressing with that. Last thing I wanted to share is that Avid is continuing to go really well. Thank you for your support. I know that a couple of you might talk about it at the end. We had a learning round at Liberty North, and they were able to see what they are doing. Currently, we have 161 students that are taking advantage of Avid between the two buildings, and that would be just freshmen and sophomores. The other piece that I'd like to add, because the A+ program evaluation was due this month, is that one thing that we are starting this year because of Avid is having our A+ coordinators go in and talk to all of the freshmen in those courses to talk about the importance of A+ and the impact that it can have on their futures. I think that will also help our numbers and give more students opportunities to get the A+.
Any questions for academic services?
Explain the pineapple part.
Why is it called pineapple?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the
Professional
pineapple-
development, but pineapple.
Yeah, so it's kind of, it comes from an author that has written a book called Hack Education, right? So it's really about the opportunity for teachers to host each other in their learning. And so they take professional experiences that they've had a lot of success with, and they share it with their colleagues. So what we have, it's really interesting. It's almost like a half day of a Vote with Your Feet conference. So we actually host on Friday a very 1,000 person conference where the teachers will travel from place to place to pick sessions of their own choosing. We have a really large, I think there's a link on there for you that you can look at. You can see who's hosting and what they're teaching. They're aligned to our vision priorities, and the outcomes are established so people can go to get the learning that they want. We are really excited because we have 30 sessions each, like what Julie said, 30 sessions each hour that include teachers working together on conscious discipline, for example, something that's been a focus for us, all the way through some specialty work where the French team will get together to work on aligning their curriculum and their resource and making sure that everybody's on the same page. So it's just based on the needs of the teachers and the things that they want to share with each other. So it's pretty exciting to watch it happen. This is our 3rd year in a row we've done it, and every time we survey at the end, we get probably the largest, most positive responses from our teachers say this is what we needed and thank you for letting us share with each other. So, and then the afternoon, focus on buildings. So the pineapple is that hosting piece. That's where it comes from, the symbol of hosting. Thanks for asking.
No question. Okay. Next up is Human Resources. Dr. Voglar.
Human Resources Department has uploaded a report there. There's 2 items on it I want to draw out. One is with regard to Grow Your Own Teachers. As you know, you adopted a proposal to supply leveraged efforts to incentivize education as a profession of choosing for minority students. That Grow Your Own Teachers Steering Committee is at work carrying out the directives from that proposal at the very beginning of the summer. Dee Rosecrans leads that team with Dr. Seahorn, and the steering committee is listed in the report, Bridget Herman, Precious Kurth, and Edward Tate as well. They've mapped out for you kind of a month-by-month progression leading up to when they'll be awarding or announcing recipients for that first class of the Grow Your Own initiative. So I've asked that committee to provide updates monthly as we go into the board meeting throughout the year so you can see that. And if you have any questions, you're certainly welcome to talk to Dee about that. Dee, is there anything you want to mention about Grow Your Own and the work that the committee is doing?
Yesterday, we're meeting every 2 weeks now for the next couple of months to get all the final pieces in place. Our meeting included Dallas Ackerman yesterday, who will help us put together and effectuate a marketing plan, internal mostly at this point, so that students, teachers, parents know about this. So we're moving along. It takes time, and we want to do it right. So lots of details. We thank the board certainly for not only the monetary support, but the philosophical support.
We have some really rich data from students. Teach KC did a survey last spring to identify kids through their survey process by name, by grade, and their level of interest in education. So we've cross-pollinated that, the survey results, with our rosters at both Liberty High School and Liberty North to identify kids who are seniors this year based on their level of interest in education. To when it's time to start marketing this, they're marketing it to a very targeted group of people who are expressing interest, not just people who are enrolled in the EIP program, for example. So good effort on the part of this committee, and I appreciate their work. The second thing I want to draw your attention to is we've included in this report a 3-year trend on the 2 district-wide indicators with regard to the Network for Educator Effectiveness. I was pretty encouraged on that trend. I see an upward score over 3 years across those 2 district-wide indicators. The reason I included that in this report is, as you know from previous board meetings, the district-wide indicators are shifting, so this really kind of times out. It will time out or put a time frame, bookends around these 2 district-wide indicators in terms of just scaling across the entire system. We'll begin a new window scaling across the system for 2 new indicators going forward. So the data is there for you to look at if you'd like to see it. You see a gradual upward progression on both of those indicators across 3 years. I thought that was very encouraging. Kudos to our teachers and the work they do in partnership with our leaders to have those reflective conversations about what works in the classroom and then putting it into practice. And that data, I think, speaks to that. That's it for my report. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Thank you, Dr. Vogelaar. Next up, then, we have Finance Report, Mrs. Sullivan.
Dr. Tucker. August and this part of September are traditionally a pretty slow month as far as changes to report for finance. We're waiting for the first exempt payroll to be run next week so we can true up employee cost projections, which you will see in October. And we're also waiting for the September 30 student count so we can true up our state formula payment. So you don't see much new news in the financial report for tonight. We did have auditors today, yesterday, and tomorrow. They are finishing up the yearly audit for FY18. Things have gone really well. They worked as hard, but I think with great success, and you will hear from them in November when they come present that report. We are looking forward to their departure, however. It's a busy week, and so we love them, but we're glad they're moving. They did also meet last night with the Audit and Finance Committee, which they do every year. They presented what they have done and what they have focused on for the audit this year. And I also depart from the room so that the Audit and Finance Committee has the option of reporting out anything that they're not happy with what I am doing perhaps, or any concerns that they have with how things are going in the district. And I think that went really well. I don't think they have any major concerns. Nothing that has been shared with me yet, however. So they always appreciate the opportunity, though, to get to hear from the auditor as a group beforehand so they can anticipate what's coming. They did not have anything to bring to your attention from the finance reports that were presented to them last night. And I believe that we will meet again in November for their next meeting. That's what I have for you tonight, unless you have questions for me.
Only thing I would add is I have a meeting tomorrow set up as an exit interview in terms of our lead auditor and I kind of talking through kind of what they've discovered during this process. Logistically, we've learned a lesson, and rather than kind of scheduling multiple pieces to the audit, part during the summer, part during the early fall, we're going to try to condense that and go back to it being completed in August. The busy time of the year in respect to September just kind of adds that additional layer to it. So we'll look to schedule that to be completed prior to the start of the school year.
Absolutely, and that was done. We had to do that this year just because of the bidding process, because we weren't sure who our auditor was going to be. We couldn't schedule in our normal time, so we kind of got the leftovers.
But we'll get back on track in that respect. So, and then the report will be forthcoming. Share that with the board and have Diane Kosterman and company here to be able to share the finalized audit report. So we look forward to sharing that. Anything for Cindy before moving on? Next up is operations. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you. A couple items I'd like to bring to your attention. First, just Friday night's football game up at Liberty North. We worked very closely with the folks up at the building. The challenge of accommodating that many folks and the cars and the traffic and so forth. So really appreciate working with the group up there at North. The other thing, it was a last minute, kind of a few days before the game decision, where we decided to provide a shuttle out of Pleasant Valley Baptist Church location. And so Jeff Baird kind of mobilized a couple of his folks, and they did that kind of through the course of the evening. And had, I think, 300 about each way, which was great and really helped them kind of soften the load for parking. I also want to send some appreciation to the construction team who did a little extra effort to open up some of those areas behind the building for parking. So it was a bit of a scramble, but I think it helped quite a bit for that evening. Also, for those who've been around for a while, back 18 years ago when Shoal Creek Elementary was built, for those of you who can picture or the front face of the building, the big gym wall had a discolored brick facade to it. And the story there was when they designed it where it was going to be intermixed, and they had the pallets of bricks out there for construction, and the crews installed it, but didn't know it was an intentional blend. And so they got to the pallet of the lighter brick, and they put it all in one section. And so that's why that blemish was always on that side of the building. And we apparently over time had a couple attempts to try to rectify that, and there was no product on the market that would handle that. We were approached about 2 weeks ago by a gentleman by the name of Eric Schnickelberger. He is the president of KC Brick, and he was involved. He was a supplier back 18 years ago, and it had driven him nuts, as with some of us. 18 years. Well, they finally developed a product. It's a stain product, and they came in last week, and if you've been by, you cannot tell that it was there. It is now one color, and they did it at no charge. They volunteered to do it because it always just drove them nuts. So we didn't pay a penny, and now it looks great. And so really, I wanted to recognize him and his team. Really appreciate them coming out, and it was a big job. They had a power wash, and they were out there for many hours. So anyway, just wanted to reference that. And last, just a quick update on construction. The report is loaded in there if you have any questions. The main projects right now we're starting to wrap up. Well, it'll take us another month or so, but Liberty North and Liberty High in the parking, if you go by, you can see continued progress at both locations. And then, of course, on the 2nd, so the next time you all together, the architect will be here to present essentially final plans for Liberty North, Liberty High, and the secure entries, as well as Franklin Elementary. And I've kind of got a little bit of a quick glimpse, and I think you've seen a little bit of that. They're starting to really take form quickly, but I think they look great. So everything's on budget, still timing-wise looks good. I should say should be on budget. We won't know until they go to bid, but they've been building the project around those initial estimates that were provided in the bond in the election. So we'll have that on October 2nd, and I'm sure we'll get a very in-depth look at what's coming next year.
On a side note, you may have noticed on social media, we have tennis players on courts at Liberty North High School as of last week.
Yes.
I think we've had a couple of matches there, so they're a bunch of excited young ladies. So. Any questions for Mr. Anderson?
I was looking at this report regarding food nutrition. 5 positions on field. The food looks good, but is that a challenge? Is that a challenge?
It's just a tough job market right now, and it's not only nutrition services, it's kids zone, transportation. They're struggling to keep folks. So I think they're bringing them in, and they've got a pretty aggressive approach to attracting folks and getting them in the front door. It's then the keeping them. It's the challenge. So there's a really high turnover rate. So we just keep working at it.
And that's the nature of our support staff. Our certified staff, that hiring season is busy really in the spring, but then the support staff piece is continuous all year long. So there's not really a day that goes by where we're not having conversations as to strategy, but then also how do we advertise those positions. So it's ongoing. Good question. Additional questions for operations? Thanks, Mr. Anderson. Under my report, I did have a couple of items that I wanted to highlight. A while back, I participated in the Governor's Conference on Economic Development, and one of the keynote speakers was the governor from Tennessee, Governor Haslam, as well as Mike Parsons. And as you likely heard, Mike Parsons kind of key goals or key areas of focus over the course of the next couple of years is in respect to infrastructure and workforce development. So I have the opportunity to participate alongside 6 other superintendents on a superintendent's panel to be able to showcase the work that we're not only doing in Liberty Public Schools, but across our state with a small sample of school districts represented to be able to focus on workforce development needs. So a great opportunity to share what we're doing, but then also glean from other districts and the work that they are doing. I think the panel was well received, but then kind of propels us into what's next in respect to taking career clusters and communicating those opportunities to students, but then also looking down to younger grade levels and introducing kind of the variety of options for students, whether it's a career field, a degree pursuit, or employment immediately after high school. Really wanting to try to lay out what that looks like in terms of mapping out a potential journey for our students as they leave Liberty Public Schools. In addition, just so that you are aware, which most of you are because you're attending the MSBA conference next week, we do have 4 presentations that Liberty Public Schools will be participating in, and we will be leaning on you as board members on the stage to be able to share kind of the work that we're doing in the area of choice and innovation, kind of a review of our Building Pride campaign and that story, an opportunity to share. The Outstanding Board of Education Award presentation also comes with a panel. And so as you all know, the board was recognized last year for Outstanding Board of Education as it relates to teaching, learning, and assessment. So we'll have a brief opportunity for a presentation followed up by a question and answer period. And we're sharing that session with the St. Charles School District on the eastern side around St. Louis. So we look forward to collaborating with them and being able to share ideas. In addition to that, we are joining up with legal counsel Gwen Mundorf to present a top 10 legal challenges facing school districts in terms of kind of a forward look in what school districts are currently facing. So I'm partnering with Jessica Bernard in that respect on that session. Fast forward to next spring at the national conference. We will again be presenting at the national conference in terms of 3 breakout sessions. 2 new topics for the national conference will be open educational resources and our work in that space. And then in addition to that, highlighting Liberty Academy and the work that they do with the Unschooled Challenge. And then we will tee up, once again, our Building Pride presentation. So we look forward to coordinating that trip and sharing more of our story. Along that same line, we have a group that is presenting at a national conference that happens to take place here in Kansas City, and that is the State Education Agency for Directors of Arts Education. We were asked to share in 2 respects on a breakout session. Mr. Money's working on that, and then myself and Melissa McCullough are on a panel in respect to what we're doing with arts integration in our district. So we look forward to telling our story there as well. Last 2 things I wanted to share. The special legislative session just wrapped up. It was a very brief session. A couple of things impacting public education, bless you, are in respect to STEM education and the ability to advance that in districts across the state, in addition to courses offered in the area of computer science and the ability for those courses to count towards math credits and those requirements, knowing that some higher institutions of education will accept those as math credits, whereas others may not. So some clarity is being sought after in respect to that legislative session. In terms of the State Board of Education, we have had a couple of appointments by Governor Parsons, and so the State Board has reconvened, actually met today, and they did announce this afternoon that they are going to post the hiring for a Commissioner of Education on September 19th, and then fast forward looking at making that announcement as to who that individual will be in early January of 2019. So they're catching up from not having been able to meet with the last several months, but then they've dove in with that process of a commissioner search. So those are the items that I wanted to provide in addition to my report, unless there are questions from the board this evening.
All right. Move on to 11:01 upcoming meetings. We've got a list there. The next time we get together, I think all of us are attending the MSBA conference, or at least some parts of it. And then we've got our study session October 2nd. Any questions about any of those dates?
One thing we were looking at doing is tomorrow, probably communicating out to the board in terms of travel arrangements to and from the conference. So I think Sandra will facilitate kind of that planning, so be looking for that.
All right. Brings us to board remarks. I just want to remind again that Liberty Education Foundation has their Education Uncorked October 20th, 2018. And if you go to libertyeducationfoundation.org/uncorked, you can purchase tickets online, or I'm sure that you can call the foundation and get tickets. Should be a great event. It's moved to a Crossley Ford, so much bigger venue, so it'll be bigger and better this year. And appreciate all the work the foundation did, and also the tailgate they hosted at the game. And I want to reiterate what Mr. Anderson said. I went to the game last year and the game this year, and it was night and day compared to how smooth things were at North. So I think they did a great job up there. Other remarks?
Yes, I would like to note that I've had an opportunity to watch Team Liberty in action, and I've really been impressed. A couple of things that I noticed is that no matter, everyone's represented pretty much, and that people take off their hats that they're wearing and try to just be a part of that committee, and I'm impressed with that. And secondly, some really self-disclosure about personal situations that the employees are dealing with. And I think it really makes it a valuable tool. I've worked in some great places, and I've worked in some difficult places. That definitely makes a difference when you have an operation like that. So, deeply impressed.
Thank you.
Liberty Alliance for Youth met Wednesday with their first meeting of the year. They are now meeting at Nortier. The meeting ran over, and there was something going on at Liberty North. So I didn't get the little tour following, but the presentation was very good. There are some bills coming up in front of the House which are a concern. And so I believe some people from Lamphy will be coming at some future point to talk to us.
Any other remarks?
I would just say that I had a chance to do the learning round at Liberty North, and we saw the AVID program, and PLP, which is taking 3 different sections of math and teaching them all at one time with multiple teachers, and it's individualized, so kids can move at their own pace, and then they have, I saw kids working in groups with teachers with just on their own, so they're able to move as quickly as they want or get the help that they need, and it was pretty impressive. And then humanities, which is ELA and social studies combined for 2 hours, so instead of 1 hour of ELA and 1 hour social studies, they're together for 2 hours with a break in the middle, and how they weave those 2 subjects together, and it was, of course, then I started thinking that we should be doing it in more places, but there's time after we test and ask questions, but it was great to see it in action. Thank you.
Impressive work.
Impressive work.
More learning rounds to come.
Yes.
You should have your schedules, as many of you as are able to make it, so.
Anything else? We mentioned it was Scott Connor's birthday?
He forgot.
Yeah, I think you mentioned that a couple times.
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna guess age.
Just wanted to make sure.
We're gonna guess the age now?
I know, but I won't say.
Yeah.
Let's get out of here.
All right. I think that concludes everything. If we have a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
We discuss.
Let's discuss.
Questions?
Let's talk about that.
Are there questions?
Roll call, please.
AJ?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Yes.
Nick?
Yes.
Hillary?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Motion